Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
And I think, is it take two?
It is. It happens. So before we get going, just want to invite everybody to like, share, subscribe. We don't always say that because we're so focused on the work, but we do want to reach as many people as possible. 2 channels, Evolutionary Energy Arts, which at one time, believe it or not, was in the top 2,500 YouTube channels, period, before it got demonized, so to speak. EEARTS, which was the backup channel, and we do try to get up at least one video a day, hopefully one on each, but do like, share, subscribe, and hopefully we will get some notifications.
Indeed.
So this went viral. This was a TikToker. So there's YouTubers and there's TikTokers. TikTokers, one of the things I didn't realize initially was TikTok is everything 3 minutes or shorter. So it's just like little blurbs. But a TikTok user has gone viral after uploading a video of her brother receiving a letter from the Selective Service System informing him that he could be drafted into the U.S. military. But the letter isn't as scary as some are making it out to be. The video, which was uploaded twice by TikTok user Victoria Casanova late last month, has been viewed collectively more than 4.4 million times. It was nice knowing you, brother, the caption says.
Sounds suspicious.
It does. And it just gets me thinking about how we need to see the bigger picture. And yes, it does sometimes feel like we are trying to stop a dam that has so many holes in it from bursting, as we try to get humanity to see the bigger picture. As you see this family off on vacation, looks like they're having a wonderful time, does it not? I don't know how many years would be since he would be drafted. I'm not good at ages since I'm getting to be pretty old. So to me, he looks like he's 12, but he's pretty tall. So maybe he's 17, 16.
I was going to say 13.
13? I don't know, but he's a tall kid. And, in times of war, unfortunately, the most horrible things do happen, including drafting and bringing people into the wars that don't necessarily want to be there. And here we see a family doing some hiking. It looks like that feels like Colorado or maybe Utah. People just want to enjoy their families and just want to enjoy their lives. And so when we look at people are people, and this is what we got to try to get across. Yeah, it's just, to me, it just is so, I don't know, it's so obvious what is going on, and yet people they buy into things hook, line, and sinker. Unfortunately, we have to wake these masses up. This family right here is Russian. This family right here is from the U.S. They want the same things. That's it. And yet their kids could both end up here very shortly, not necessarily in the U.S. or over at Fort Bragg, for the Russian kids, but the equivalent on the other side. And when you look at these, to me, they're kids. Yes, they are young men. But when we look at things like selective service and the draft, they started to take people as young as 18 to 27 was one of the first age groups. But when World War II broke out, it was actually all the way up to 64. You had to register up to 64. Yet we've seen so many of the world leaders that seem to get exempted from all these things, but they don't get exempted from the caviar, the lobster tails, and the filet mignon.
Right. They get to indulge in it.
Yes, as we look at the elite and the royalty of the world, which the royalty of the world is still there, whether it's a corporate boardroom or whether it's Buckingham Palace. It doesn't matter. They're still the elite. They still get out of whatever they want to get out of, and they still order all those others to do whatever they want them to. This is part of the system. This system is what is the problem with the world. As we see G20, G7, we see WEF, we could see Trilateral Commission, we could see the UN, we could see all the other alphabet soups that, many people are waking up to the fact they don't serve humanity, they serve themselves.
They serve themselves for various reasons, but I do believe that most of us that are sitting here at our homes with our families, wherever you're at, you just want to enjoy day-to-day life. Unfortunately, they have something else in line.
And I can see what's rolling right here. As you see, Senator Portman, world would be better without Putin. Well, I think the world would be better without the the power structure itself. I mean, we could start listing hundreds and thousands of people in quote unquote service to humanity and the governments of the world that the world would be better off without. Absolutely. Why stop right there with Putin? Why don't you add, you could add 46 into the mix for sure. I can't believe one person who was subscribed to this channel supposedly for 2 years, although I doubt it when you start looking at, some of the comments out there. And I for one, there are so many fake accounts in this world. It's just crazy, because you'll find them. They'll come in and they'll just make little one-liners trying to make something really, really negative. They want to stir things up. So if we're talking about, being anti-war from the point of view that, Russians and Americans and Chinese and pick any other country, people, for the most part, they just want to go about their lives and have some personal freedom. They don't want things like this to interfere with their lives, as we see Putin ordering a draft of 135,000. And this is the Hill, amid difficulties in Ukraine war. So a draft is, in my opinion, never a good thing. Never a good thing. Now, you're ordering a draft, and it's not about defending your country, or is it? Because, again, we could get bogged down in that. We do know NATO is all around Russia. NATO has surrounded Russia. But this is, again, part of the bigger plan. This chessboard has basically the same team playing both sides. And the only side that is not really being played is the side of the average human.
It's like having a chessboard, and normally you have the black pieces and the white pieces, but really all the pieces are the same color. It's that entity that is running the chessboard, working both sides of the game, and we need to really, really understand that so we can step back from it.
And we've seen people, and sorry, there's a herd of antelope going through. We've seen people in our own family be super divided, and we're talking about the EEARTS, Evolutionary Energy Arts family, where some, are sending me articles and talking about how, Putin is the savior, and then others are looking at him like the second coming of Hitler, and then many are looking somewhere in between. It's recognizing again that it's all about division. All about division, and it's working, unfortunately, as unfortunately we get too many people taking these sides and not seeing that all the chess pieces are being moved from higher up. And, Russia has not been invaded, and yet he is ordering a draft. Sure, he's encircled by NATO, but again, does he know? Everybody's going to have their own opinion on the bigger plans. You just have to utilize your own intuition, develop your own intuition. So, again, get off the soda pop, stop eating McDonald's, stop eating Burger King. I would even stop eating at like Olive Gardens and Applebee's, because the guides have said anybody that's, getting food from these big corporations like Cisco, for instance, which supplies food to so many places. And I used to run retirement communities. I used to manage retirement communities. And when I learned that we were spending an average, and this was one of the largest companies in this industry in the country and in the world, they were spending an average of $2.38 per person for 3 meals a day. How good a quality is the food going to be? And this is what you run into. So if you're eating at these big chains, again, you are going to be getting GMO foods. You are not getting organic. And who knows what's inside them? And so, we don't even eat out anymore. We cook everything ourselves, and just to make sure. that we at least hopefully can minimize the exposure to things that are less than ideal for the body.
All we can do is the best we can, because we're kind of handed this life in a way where we can only get away from things so much. So one thing that we do talk about is you really have to be deliberate about detoxing every day, because just breathing, you're going to get all of these bad things inside of your body, and it's unfortunate, and that's another thing they do to control us.
So these are the countries with the biggest populations in the world in 2022, and you have China at 1.448 billion, India right behind at 1.406 billion. And India's growth rate is more than 3 times that of China. So India will, barring that third global conflagration and, unexpected or expected things that will happen, India should be the most populous country in the world in the not too distant future. Then you have the United States, 334 million that are registered. There might be 20, 30, 40 million illegals in the country. We don't even know, really, when you get down to it. And then you have Indonesia, Pakistan, Nigeria, Brazil, Bangladesh, and there's Russia. Okay, now Russia is the largest as far as land mass, 145 million people, and their population's actually declining. So 145 million, he's calling up right now 135,000 young men, perhaps some women, will be volunteering as well. So you could see Russia is pretty close in size to Mexico. Mexico, 131 million people. And you might make note of Japan, too, whose population is declining and getting very old. So that's a significant portion of the population that's being called up just for this draft, which, there's not foreign troops on Russian soil that any of us know about at the moment. And then we saw this just a little while ago in the event of a draft. This is from the Selective Service. Our agency would partner with FEMA to provide opportunities to conscientious objectors to ensure our nation keeps moving forward. Our nation keeps moving forward. We are divided into these nations. Again, I go to Deuteronomy 32:8, when it talks about these higher powers dividing amongst themselves the nations, the tribes of the earth. And then we look to the Sumerian tablets and we see the Sumerian city-states with their own patron deities, and they're always at war with each other, fighting and invading each other. It's like parents like kids in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And we just have the same conformity going on over and over and over.
In World War II time, actually, the population of the U.S. was probably similar to the population of Russia now. And, how many U.S. soldiers were drafted in World War II? 50 million men. That's amazing. That's a huge number of people. By the end of World War I, in November 1918, some 24 million men had registered under the Selective Service Act. Of the almost 4.8 million Americans who eventually served in the war, some 2.8 million had been drafted, who got drafted in World War II following Japan's surprise attack. Not so surprised, really, if you've looked at it. They knew that was happening. They could have saved lives by getting those ships out of harbor. Instead, they let it happen because they wanted the war to happen. And again, Congress amended the act then to require all able-bodied men 18 to 64 to register with their local draft board. Now, going back to the time when that happened, at 64, in the time of the 1940s, that was pretty old. Mm-hmm. Gotta say, I'm not too far off from that right now, but I think people, well, maybe that's debatable, because there are, we were living longer lives. Now we're losing our life expectancy again the last 3 years. And of course, there's a lot of people that are couch potatoes living in a virtual reality already.
Mm-hmm. We do have a lot of that, and they're making it more and more convenient for people to just step into a virtual reality and make it their own reality.
61.2% of those that went to World War II and fought were drafted. And the draft didn't really totally go away. From 1940 to 73, during both peacetime and periods of conflict, men were drafted to fill vacancies in the armed forces that could not be filled through volunteer means. When we look at the fact, and this article is 7 years old, and you could actually, we have been at war 7 more years. So it's probably 94% of the time, thereabouts. You could say 229 out of 246 years since 1776, the United States has been at war. We've always been at war. Yeah, as it says, there's no U.S. president that truly qualifies as a peacetime president. And in fact, this is what you can look at for the globe too, as we've talked about it. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. There's always wars, always. In the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age, that's all we've known the last 5,000-6,000 years. There's always been wars. This is all we see. And so, here you could look at some of the different wars. Do you see? Is there any, where's their time period without? This is just the U.S. This is just the history of the U.S. Look at these. It's nonstop. We're always at war. And a lot of these, you probably never even heard of. Look at this. War is just something that never stops. Now, to me, that shows that the true leadership of this world is either extremely incompetent or they're in business of war. Pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very simple. I mean, this just goes on and on and on and on and on. And once you realize this and you realize what's happening, you kind of absorb it and you realize, there's something really, really wrong with this picture.
Absolutely. And some of these places will boggle your mind because you haven't learned of them and haven't learned of these different conflicts. By the way, see, we're still going on here. We're just getting to the 70s now. How many people are aware of this? So when we see what's going on and they've made mention of a draft possibility here in the U.S. and Russia drafts people. And then, of course, we could go to 1871 again, and we could talk about that famous statement by Alfred Pike, 33rd degree Mason, also a Confederate general whose statue was pulled down not too recently. And of course, the battles with the Native Americans and the genocides, it's a horrible thing. This is a not so good thing to see because this shows you part of what they have in store in their plans. And again, war is one of the most profitable industries there is, and also gives you absolute power because civil liberties often, when it's times of emergency and war, well, they all get suspended, and then it's basically ruled by military decree. Russian Duma passes law giving 15-year prison sentences for spreading false information about the military. Well, when we see false information about anything in this world, it means you go against the narrative that they want to give. It doesn't mean it's untrue. It could be very, very true, but you just can't talk about it.
Right. Well, if this were a fact, then many of the controllers would be getting prison sentences, but they won't, and they never will.
And we see Putin signs decree ordering gas exports to be halted if buyers don't pay in rubles. And so, there's all this talk about paying in rubles, not paying in rubles. Now, the petrodollar has been going back to Nixon's time. That's the dominant way the whole oil industry and everything operates. And that's why the U.S. has always had this hegemony and control. Curious to see the ruble, which Biden said, oh, the ruble's toast, it's collapsed. The ruble regains 100% of its losses after Russia invaded Ukraine. Why? And so, they're going to give you different ways of looking at things. But what is the real goal ultimately is what we have to be asking ourselves. We already know, there is a new world order. How about getting an idea of what the new world order is supposed to be by looking at what the old world order was? Well, the old world order has been U.S. NATO dominance, hasn't it? And truly, when you get down to it, the controllers control everything. It's just a kind of a ruse. They do shift power. We had the old world order with the Roman Empire, which did keep form. It just changed and morphed consistently for a very, very long time. I mean, you have the Holy Roman Empire being out there. Well, we could look it up, but I want to say that lasted, if we go back to the time of Caesar and you're talking BC, the Holy Roman Empire was still out in form going into the 1700s. That's a long time. Of course, it wasn't necessarily the dominant world power, as we do know eventually the British Empire and then the American Empire, but really it's all still the controller's empire. As so many of these families, they're all related. Whether we're talking the reality of U.S. presidents being so interrelated, but when we look at the royal families, they're all interrelated too.
And that kind of helps me understand, like, when we're looking at the controllers of this world, it's like many people are just playing what I call like Disneyland parent, because they're going to whichever side best fits their emotional needs, whichever side that they think is going to do what they want. Yet anything that has anything to do with fairness or equality, it has to go through some court, and it has months and months and months of court documents, people talking. It's just all so much hot air. It gets really overwhelming sometimes.
Absolutely. And so we see this from Sputnik. BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, BRICS has been around for quite a while, and it's been developing as an alternative to the petrodollar and an alternative to U.S. NATO dominance. BRICS countries will be at the heart of the New World Order, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister says. Interesting. Since the West has declared a hybrid war against Russia, Moscow has to search for opportunities in other regions. The BRICS countries, again, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, will be at the heart of the New World Order, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said. In all respects, these countries will become the basis of a new world order, the Deputy Foreign Minister told RT. When asked whether the BRICS countries would take a more important role in the world, Russia is working to establish contacts with any country that is interested in cooperation. There is no news here about our stable and long-standing policy of establishing a comprehensive static partnership with China. This is just another step, he said. So, here you see, he's actually saying we are going to be the new world order. It'll be centered with Russia, China, and others. And we have gotten that the powers that be want to shift it east. And, again, the awakening of the dragon, the 200 million man army, which could easily be mounted by China. And if India ended up on that size with those two countries, you almost have 3 billion people. 3 billion people of the world population right now. Ultimately, nothing really changes. It's just going to be a different way of doing things. Because in China, look at what you have. You have social credit scores. This is part of the plan for the whole globe. Everybody will have their social credit score. Do we truly own anything? Not really. If you miss your taxes, they could take your house. We don't really own anything in this world as long as this system is in place. And it doesn't matter where they base, themselves out of, whether it's Rome, London, DC, or Beijing. It's still the same power structure. The only difference in this new world order is it's going to be right in your face.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be right there, and they're not going to try to hide anything, and they're not going to try to put on any kind of illusion, because they know they can't keep up the illusion any longer. So they're just going to make the situation very obvious for everybody.
As the monkeys are pretty wound up. This article is interesting. This talks about men against fire. How many soldiers actually fired their weapons at the enemy during the Vietnam War? Because there were studies that showed only 3 out of 10 actually really did fire their weapons. And even going back to World War I and World War II, in the trenches in World War I, that was some absolutely brutal, horrible fighting. And again, depending on where you were, if you were on the border of a town, maybe somewhere in Europe, maybe on the French-German border, on the Polish-German border. You might have family members on the other side, and we saw that in the Civil War in the U.S., where family members are literally fighting each other. They could have been out there having a nice time like this, and then they find themselves out there on the opposite sides. The average people of the world just want to live their own life. That's it. They just want to have the freedom to determine what they want to do with their lives. And when we were talking about a draft, and this is, again, part of their plan is a third WW. And if you have a third WW, you will have countries drafting people left and right. And, again, it gets tougher and tougher to be a conscientious objector when they come knocking on your door, fully armed.
It does. It gets really stressful. Once you understand the bigger picture and you start to absorb all of this information, it brings on another layer of stress. And then people want to figure out, okay, how am I going to get out of this system? And that's where we talk on EEARTS about how do we cope with this and what do we do to get out of this system. But it starts with you. It starts with us healing. As one person heals after another, we can come together and work with each other.
And any way you look at it, war scars souls. And, being intuitive like Cindy and myself are, and being in places where there's been conflicts, there's places that we've been at that are extremely uncomfortable for us because we can still sense the soldiers that are, in many cases, still wandering the battlefields of, say, the Civil War, 60, 70 years later. They're still kind of lost in limbo. That is the type of thing that happens from the chaos of war. It not only destroys the body of the soldier when they're killed, it has an effect on your soul.
And a long-term effect too. It takes a lot to heal from all the traumas that we've dealt with in this lifetime. And we have layers upon layers of traumas caused by war that we're all working on trying to heal our ancestral line. And it's no small feat, but this is what we have to do now. This is the time that we have to do it. And we just need to get that done.
Yes, so we just wanted to share this with you guys to perhaps illuminate some eyes and minds to the bigger picture that's in play, so we could go get ourselves out of the dark age and start doing the things that we want to do, not serving, the interests of the elites as they just simply bask in their power and their caviar and lobster tails. Thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. We couldn't do it without you guys. Check out Medicinal Foods, link on every video. Use coupon code EEA and get a discount. It does support the channel. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.